I recently did a video where I showed you how I upgraded my Warn 8274 high mount winch. I did a bunch of internal upgrades and so on. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the rest of that process, how the winch works, how I've connected it up with the free spool, with the 24-volt system, and how the rope's done, how the mounting system's done, and a bunch of other information. So this is a follow-on from that other video. So Roadrunner Off-Road, who own a brand called Winch Gear, they manufacture in Australia a bunch of upgrades and componentry for winches. These guys are all about winching, four-wheel driving, winch competitions and stuff like that. So they do have a wealth of experience and knowledge on the subject. And so they've helped me build this winch. They've given me a lot of advice. They've supplied some componentry as well. And as part of the deal, I'm just providing content to help educate you guys, so that's in the interests of disclosure. So first thing I'm going to show you is the winch motor. So in the previous video I talk about the free spool delete. Now that's on the standard Warn winch, there's a knob over here, you pull that to engage and disengage the motor. Well, this system deletes all of that, and that means that to do that, you've got to have an air free spool, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I just wanted to make one point about the motor on this. With that free spool delete, the mechanism is designed so that you can literally unbolt this motor and all the gear internals stay in their right place. And that's from a competition perspective. If you blow a motor, unbolt this one, put the new one on, and away you go. So that's a really cool feature that I wanted to touch on with regards to that free spool delete. Now the next thing that I did on this winch to upgrade it was we've installed a 76mm longer winch drum. That means that I can have 50 meters of winch line on this drum. And to support the winch in that form, we have to add these tie bar systems in the back here. Now, the tie bars are supplied by Roadrunner Off-Road, but they actually get it from a mate of theirs, and he supplies that. Now, I can't remember the guy's name, so I'm going to link that down below when I get back to the guys, because you see, I'm out here filming and I don't have the information. Anyway, that's the joys of YouTube in the bush. So these tie bars, you have to weld them onto the end plate and onto the main body of the winch, and then they bolt in place, and they give that whole structure a lot more support. Now, one point I want to make, if you ever do this upgrade, when you install these tie bars and position them on the housing, just make sure that you take very good note of where the bolts are going to go in and out, and don't position things so that you block the bolts getting into the tie bars, okay? I nearly made that mistake. Other than that, you need to aluminium weld those on there. I just used a TIG welding process to do that. The next area I want to talk about is how I've actually mounted the winch into the vehicle. Now, this is an ARB steel bull bar that I've significantly modified. I've actually had this bull bar on two of my four-wheel drives, and now it's onto my race car. Now, I've actually cut out, if you know these bars, there's usually a piece of pipe coming through here. I've essentially cut the top of the bar off and lowered this top bar down onto the main body of the winch, which is a little bit different, but I just like the look of that. But what it allowed me to do was mount the bull bar onto the top of the chassis rail, and that gives me a much better approach angle. But it did mean that I had to think carefully about how I mounted the winch into the bar. So what I did was, one of my sponsors is a guy here in Sydney called Craft Metalwork, and Marcus is just a one-man band that specializes in custom stuff and making things, and he's just he's a good guy, and he does some good stuff. So I went to Marcus and I said, mate, what I want to do is essentially cut the guts out of the bull bar, this whole middle section here, and he bent me up and fabricated this cradle. So this is a 6mm piece of flat bar which we've bent, and I've grafted that and welded that into the center section of the bull bar to give me this nice strong winch mount. it's working great. It's certainly strong enough for the job. I didn't like the fact I had to rebait this area of the bar to mount the winch. I did everything I could not to have to do that, because that does remove a certain degree of the structural strength on the top of the bar here. But I've used the winch in anger and it's not deforming or anything like that. So if you can come up with a better scenario, great. In my case, I couldn't push the winch any further back into the vehicle, and I didn't want to bring the bull bar any further forward. So that was my compromise area. Now the winch rope that I'm running on this is a rope called Sniper Line. And what that is it's a rope that has an internal structure that gives it the strength. That's what's actually doing the pulling. But then the external structure is like a outer case, a protective sheath of the internal rope. And that means that this rope is really, really strong, but it is also very, very abrasion resistant. And so this rope is absolutely top notch. I think it's probably up there with the best you can get. Now, I just want to talk about a thought here. Many people will say, well, you've got $600 Australian worth of rope on your winch, Matt. That's blooming up there. But you go and buy any quality winch rope and you're going to be paying, maybe not that much money, but you're going to be paying, let's say, half of that amount of money. I want to give you this as the scenario, and this is the way I'm thinking about this quality of rope. If I'm in a competition and I have to winch up some nasty piece of rock and the vehicle's effectively hanging on this rope, if I have a lesser rope and that rope breaks, my vehicle falls to the ground. I'm going to do way more damage to the vehicle than $300 worth of extra rope. So having the security of a quality rope does, to my mind, pay off. And that's not really only in the competition scene. That could apply in the recreational scene if you're into wheeling that bit harder and like to really sort of push some limits. What happens if your winch rope breaks because you've got a lesser quality winch rope? That was my thinking. Obviously, we all have budget restraint and we all have different scenarios that determine what we can and can't do. And Roadrunner guys have given me this rope in exchange for content, so it's a barter system, so I haven't had to dig into my Skyrocket for that. But I do like the thinking, and I think if I was building this and paying for the parts out of my own pocket, I would probably save up that extra coin to buy that extra quality rope. Now, at the end of the rope, I've got the Factor 55 Ultra Hook. Again, they're one of the sponsors of my race team, and they wanted me to run the Ultra Hook on the end of the winch line. This is pretty much up there with the most technically advanced winch hook. I mean, who would have thought you could take a winch hook and turn it into this monster? Now, on that, if ever you want to get your hands on any of this and you love what I do here at Mad Matt 4 Drive, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, you'll get the notifications of when I put videos up on my channel. But if you go to A247, and this is linked down below, you get 20 Australian dollars off any purchase of the Factor 55 gear from the A247 store. And that's just a way, not only can you get gear, you can get a bit of a discount, but you can support me because I get a bit of a kickback from that income stream. And the next thing with regards to the winch, many people haven't seen this before. Now, this is what we call a winch dildo. All right? Now, what it's about is, imagine we're in a racing situation and my navigator's jumped out of the car, he's hooked this up and all of that. He's got to get back in the car, he's got to put his race harness and all that back on. So while he's getting in the car, he's hooked this on and running around there. I'm winching in. I've got the controls on the dash and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm winching in, and when the hook gets to a certain point, it just pulls down on the dildo. It slows the winch down, but it gives me a visual cue of where the rope length is at. So that's what this is all about. When we're at the start of a winch stage, we'll actually have this stored back down here on the horse, but once we've used the winching anchor, that's what we'll do. We'll just hook it on there and get going. And the reason we store it back down here on the horse is obviously I don't want this smashing into my Raptor lights there and doing some damage. You know, that wouldn't be cool, would it? So the first thing is the motor. This is a 12 volt / 24 volt motor. So it's designed to run on 2 voltages. You can see there 5,000 RPM, 6.8 horsepower, and that's called the Bullet 68. You can get all of these motors from Roadrunner Off-Road, obviously. So I've made this winch to run on 24 volts, and the advantage of that is less amperage for the same work. All right, and the way I've done that is I've installed this 24 volt alternator onto the Toyota 4.5 litre petrol engine. So if you look down there, what I've done is I've set up a belt drive system that comes off the AC compressor and then runs up to this alternator. Now, there's a few things I'd say about that. You need to run the right types of belt. This is a PX type belt, so it's a internally notched belt. It's an A57 is my size. If anybody wants to do this, there's some tips for you. You've got to run 2 idler pulleys, so you can see this idler pulley here. That's so that you get enough belt wrap on the AC compressor. I wish that focus would work for me. Naturally, to run 24 volts, I've got to have 2 batteries. So there's battery number 1, and over this side's battery number 2. So this is how I turn the winch on. That's the master switch. This is our spool. So now I've got my compressors on over here, so now I've got air going to the free spool, so the winch is in free spool mode. Obviously I'm not going to do it, but that's my in and out on the winch control. So you could just hear the air deleting from the spool then. So never having had a winch of this capacity, and I know there's blokes out there who've got quad motor winches and massive winches, but for where I'm at, this is absolutely amazing. I'm loving having a winch that's seriously built. I love having the controls in the cab. It's just an amazing piece of gear. But anyway, if you'd love to support the companies that are supporting me, go over to Roadrunner Off-Road, let them know that I've sent you there, and hopefully they'll give you a bit of a discount and help you guys get out there and wheel well as well. So anyway, reminder, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. Let us know in the comments down below what you think is the best winch solution. I'm Mad Matt. Stay safe on the trails.